Hello and welcome to the nitty gritty of classroom transformations. My name is Natalie.
And I'm Katie.
And we are so excited to teach you about classroom transformations today.
We are both sixth grade math teachers from Central California. I'm a twin mom, but we're both dog moms. And we are just here because we love engaging students in math and watching them grow in the math classroom.
And we also loved iced coffee, so if you see us drinking during this session, that is why. But we want to start off with talking about what classroom transformations are, for those of you who aren't familiar with them. Oftentimes, we found on the internet sometimes when people hear the word classroom transformation, they think about when people take their classroom, just a bare classroom, and just decorate it. And I'm talking like the start of the year, over the summer, but actually classroom transformations are a day where you are transforming your space, whether it be for that day, a week. Some people have done like longer units, and you incorporate your content into that somehow. So to give you a better idea of what this has looked like in our classroom, this was one of our classroom transformations from this past school year. This is CSI Day, and we'll be referring to CSI Day as we go through our session today. But as you can see, there's a couple different things, and we'll get into detail on each one, but we have different stations that you see. You're going to see student workstations in the middle. You just got zoomed into a lovely QR code. I have an amazing video to show you in a little bit about how we have our students check their answers. But that is what a classroom transformation is, just to give you a better visual.
And why do we use them? It's not just because we love spending extra time to redecorate our classroom.
But we kind of do.
Well, that's true. But we really feel like these classroom transformations help build a positive math mindset for our students. And that is done by just engaging them through something different than they're used to. And these usually create buy-in. So on the days following or the days ahead while they're anticipating this, they're excited about what's to come, and then once we've done them, then they're like, what are we going to do today, or what are we going to do, now what? They're always like anticipating something fun in math class. So because of these, we've seen huge student growth and mastery of standards in our math class, so we feel like the payoff is huge when it comes to our students' learning and growth.
Okay, so before we start getting into the nitty-gritty of our session in classroom transformations, we want you to take a second and think about this question. So the question is, does your classroom typically have systems in place that do not depend on you? And so by that, what we mean is, do your students come into your classroom on a typical day, and do they know what to do, or are they waiting for you to get in the front of the classroom and kind of tell them what's happening for the day? And the reason why we want you to think about this is because classroom transformations aren't something that need to be or should be teacher-led. In the way we structure these, you're going to see that a lot of the heavy load and lifting is done by the students, and you're really just there to facilitate and make sure that there's no fires to put out. So if this is not something that you feel like is a strong point, that's okay. Save this session for when you feel like you're ready to bring this into your classroom. But we do feel very strongly that organization and structure is super important in these classroom transformations for them to be successful and for you to actually see those benefits that Katie just talked about.
So if you do feel like that's true of your classroom, you have those systems in place and students don't rely on you for every single part of their math period, then you're ready for a transformation. And here is the nitty gritty. So these are the steps that we follow when we're planning a classroom transformation. The first thing we do is we pick a theme. So we're talking like, are we going to do CSI Day? Are we going to do Glow Day? What sort of theme do we want to
Incorporate.
Thank you. There's the word. And then once we've chosen the theme, we pick what skill or standard that the students will be working on. And we'll talk later about where this might fit within your unit or in your year. Once we have the skill and the theme, then we start to pick activities and tasks that we want our students to actually do. So are we playing games? Are they what actually will the day look like? And then once we figure out what tasks we want them to do, then we either poll or create questions and prompts that go with those activities. Then we figure out how we want to actually structure everything from start to finish. So when students walk in the door to the time they leave, what exactly will they be doing, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to go into a detail about every single step, but this is sort of the overview of how we put together a transformation.
And just keep in mind as we start getting into this information that you can make this as big or small as you want. We showed a video, obviously, of one of our classroom transformations. If you feel like that is too much or you don't want to go that big necessarily, you can totally downsize. We've seen teachers do classroom transformations with some of our ideas where they literally just have their students actually doing the questions and they just put a theme with it and they don't have all those extras. So just keep in mind whatever information we present to you today is just a way for you to take it and make it your own. Okay. So the first step, as Katie said, is deciding what theme you want to go with and then the skills and standards. So when you're thinking about your theme, you're going to want to think about, are you going to pick a theme that is non-related specifically to the actual content, or is it just a general theme? So what I mean is we've done an operation day. We teach 6th grade math, and so one of our standards is teaching students how to evaluate expression using the order of operations. So we took that and we ran with it and we did Operation Day, where our students were literally dressed up as surgeons and they were performing surgery on different made-up celebrity people, and they were solving math problems within that. Then we also have done CSI Day, and that was that first video you saw where that topic or skill that was covered was dividing fractions. But dividing fractions had no like direct correlation or like spin on the name with CSI Day. It was just a general theme that we picked, and then we tied it with the dividing fractions. So these are just a few pictures of some of those transformations. This is another picture of CSI Day. Like I said, this one didn't have a specific like tie into dividing fractions. We just picked the theme because we found that it had a lot of items that we can easily bring in, which brings me to the next thing that you want to think about. Can you get donations from a local business? So oftentimes people's biggest worry with classroom transformations is, where do I get this money from? Where does the funding come from? And so you do not have to spend very much money, if any at all. We have put on classroom transformations with donations from local businesses or different like hospitals, or was it a doctor's office?
Yeah,
I think
doctor's
both.
office. Yeah.
So for example, one of the transformations that we pretty much put together with donations was our Starbucks Day. We went to, well, Katie knows a lot of people, so she got the hookup for us and got a ton of these Starbucks bags. They gave us like coffee beans. They gave us actual Starbucks cups that we used to serve our students like fake frappuccinos. It was just chocolate milk and whipped cream, I think.
Yeah.
Another example that you'll see pictures of later is our Operation Day, and that one is the one I just mentioned. We went to a local doctor's office, and this was before the pandemic, so we lucked out with that. But they gave us like boxes of masks, gowns, gloves. They even gave us those little head,
what were this?
hairnet type of things. So that was what allowed us to like really play off of the Operation Day, and our students got dressed and they were performing surgery that day.
And like for the CSI Day in that picture you saw, like this was a setup for Stephen Curry, and so I think the first year we even borrowed one of the students' shirts because we didn't have one of his jerseys or a shirt from even that team. So we're bringing things from home that we already have. Like the number 1, we got those around Halloween, so we got like, half off, just sort of collecting things as we saw them for cheap too.
Yeah, and that pretty much is the common theme with everything you see in our classroom transformations. Maybe it's not going to be a donation, but like Katie said, it's going to be something that you're bringing in from home and borrowing. We borrow stuff all the time from relatives or even sometimes people on campus, staff members. And then something else to think about is how can you repurpose the items in the future? So if you pick a classroom transformation, how are you going to be able to use those items that you collect for a future transformation so that you're not having to buy or collect things again? So one big thing that we do for every transformation is, with the exception, I would say, of Starbucks Day, everything as far as tablecloths, we reuse. So we go to Dollar Tree, I think probably like our second year. We've only had to replace them maybe once. We went to Dollar Tree, we bought a bunch of black tablecloths. We even cut them in half so that you get more of them for a cheaper price. And we know Dollar Tree isn't even $1 anymore. It's like $1.25.
Yeah. Now they're going to cut force.
But we pretty much, at the end of each transformation, we'll talk about how we reset things at the end of this presentation. We make sure that we give our expectations, and then at the end, we are able to reuse those things and store them for the next time we need them. Oops, wrong way. There we go.
So once you've chosen your theme and you sort of have planned out where you're going to get things to incorporate that theme, you need to choose what skills or standards that you want to focus on in your transformation. And you may have sort of already done that when you're choosing your theme if you chose a theme that goes along with your content. But once you've, so then you want to pick what you're going to work on and ask yourself, like, is this going to be a transformation I do at the end of my unit? So we're going to review before a big test. Or is it going to be practice for a newly learned topic? Our word of caution would be, though, you need to make sure that it's a skill that your students are good enough with or that they can be successful on their own with. Otherwise, your transformation will sort of fall apart as far as discipline's not the right word, but as that day, you're going to feel like all you're doing is helping students solve questions because they don't know how to do the math. So that would be our word of caution. But you can sort of ask yourself, like, what is the purpose of this? And then from there, pick your skills and standards that you'll be working on.
And we say that so that you learn from our mistakes, because the first year that we did a transformation on order of operations, I think we had taught the lesson. I don't even know if we had a practice day built in before the transformation, and we went right into it. And our students were actually overall pretty good at doing it, but they hadn't gotten enough practice and weren't like super fluent with all of the steps yet. And so that day we did feel a little bit overwhelmed because it was just like question after question. So,
and they honestly, I don't think they enjoyed it as much because they were frustrated because the math was harder in a sense, so they couldn't move on to the next station and stuff. So yeah, just a word of caution.
Okay, so once you have your theme and your skill or standard picked out, that brings us to the second thing, or step 2, and that is going to be thinking about how you're going to kind of start structuring this. And so something to think about is there are a couple ways that you can structure your classroom transformations. So you can do this where it's independent, where students are working by themselves. I don't think we have ever done a transformation in that modality, just because part of the fun in classroom transformations is letting the students collaborate and work together and kind of experience it together, because honestly it is an experience that you're putting on for them. And I know every year our students always refer to some of our transformations as like the favorite things of the whole school year. So just keep that in mind. If you do choose to do an independent classroom transformation, the overall like energy and I would say just maybe outcome of it might be a little bit different. But the other two, or the other way that you can do this is in partner or team oriented. So within that, you can do station style. This is probably the one that we go to the most. And within that, there are 2 different ways that you can structure within. So there's self-paced and timed. So this is an example. This is our operation day that we've been talking about. Again, those are Dollar Tree tablecloths that have been, they're still in our bins actually. They're probably going on 5 years and still look real good. But this classroom transformation, we did station style. So each of these operating rooms you see were a station. We just call them operating rooms to kind of meet the theme of the day. And the way it worked is it was student paced. So In the middle, you're going to see these are the student workstations. So this is where the students were actually solving the math. Then when they finished operating on someone, they would report to that operating room when they were done. So that's self-paced or student-paced because as their team finishes, they have the ability to go and get the next task they need. Another way that we've done station style is with a time limit. So when we do our glow day, we do that on a time frame because what they're doing is they're playing a different activity or game at each of the stations. And so we gave, I think it's like 8 to 10 minutes at each station. So you have one team at each station. And for those 8 or 10 minutes, they're working on the problems within that particular place. And then after the time is up, then they rotate to the next one. And then we've also done a couple whole classroom transformations. This particular one, I think is like one of my favorites because it was so fun. Like the energy was so high that day. We actually we had a huge class. It was over 60 kids in our classroom before the pandemic. And this was where we had a class competition. So it was Katie's class versus my class. And we were doing like a football kickoff day for state testing. And so with this one, it was literally whole class in that everyone was doing the same exact thing at the same exact time. So those are 3 different ideas for how you can structure your classroom transformations.
And once you have your structure, like how you're going to set up this day, then you need to choose your questions. So once you know what content you're using, you have to ask, what activities you're going to do, you have to ask yourself, are we going to present these on task cards? Are we going to have the information in a folder? Are we working off of a worksheet? And I think this part was sort of the scariest for me when we first started because I thought, it's going to be a ton of work to come up with all these questions and reformat everything. So keep it simple. Like, use questions you already have or use the study guides you were going to use anyway. Don't go rethink everything. So that's why I put worksheets on here. Like, if you cut up, the first 4 questions they're going to answer at the station 1 and the second 4 they're going to answer at station 2. Like, that works too. You don't have to go recreate everything. Maybe you have task cards that you would normally use for them to practice a skill. Use those task cards at the station. And then you kind of want to think, how am I going to present them to the students? Like, will I put all of this information in a folder that they go grab from the station, or will I have a folder or an envelope there at the station with the questions? And then you can ask yourself, like, how will I vary these question types? If you're going to have DOK 1 questions at station 1, but a DOK 3 question at station 2, just keep in mind that you want to keep them all about the same time frame, or it should take the students about the same time to solve them. So don't take, it'll take them 20 minutes to solve station 1, but it'll only take them 10 to solve station 2. Just be careful with that. And then a huge piece of this is the answers. And this sort of goes back to our first question we asked of, in your classroom, do your students depend on you for everything? This is something that they cannot depend on you for, and that is checking the answers. Because once they're done with this task or a station or whatever you have for them, they need to check their answers. Like, they need to know if they're correct, especially if you're using this for a review day. You don't want them to practice wrong. So a couple of ways that we have had answer keys for our students is literally like we have an answer key and the team captain can go get the answer key and check the answers. We've also done some more creative presentations, and I think we have them here.
Yeah, we'll get into that
later.
in a little bit.
Just kidding. So there's lots of ways you can present the answers, but you should have the answer key somewhere, and this should be a sort of a system that you have already set up in your classroom that you can just play into on this day.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the biggest questions we get is like always having to do with structure, things related to structure. And so I know something that people ask a lot is, well, how do you ensure that your students are actually working during this time? Or how do you make sure that they're being honest when they're checking the answers? And so that's why it goes back to that big question. Is this like a norm in your classroom as far as are your students doing things independently, pretty frequently? And so that when a classroom transformation day does come up, they know what to do and they know what the expectation is. Okay, so we're going to get into a little bit more detail in step 3 now. What is this day going to look like from start to finish for your student? And so what we really did was we do this pretty fluidly now because we've been teaching together. I think this is our 6th year together now. Mm-hmm. So this is literally a conversation that we have when we're getting ready for a classroom transformation. So the first thing we ask ourselves is, how are we going to get class started? And so literally what we mean is, how are our students going to know what group they're in or what pairing or however you're structuring that. Something that we do is our students line up outside of our door. We work in a 6-8 middle school. We know some of you are at a K-6 elementary if you're a 6th grade teacher. But our students line up outside of our door, and as they walk in, they already know what group they're going to because we established that right before as they're lining up. So we've done it a couple different ways where for Glow Day, for example, we might give them the color glow stick that they are. We also have literally just had them stand in lines with the team that we assign them. And then another thing that you want to think about is in a lot of our pictures, you saw that there were student workstations in the middle of the classroom. So something that we've found is super important is not to let the students kind of, I guess, block the station especially if you're doing it self-paced. So what I mean is, like, this particular classroom transformation, we just had a conversation about it. We assigned each group. So once they knew what group they're in, we said, okay, you're going to go to that table. You're going to go to that table. And it wasn't like they were trying to, be bad or not listen to our instructions, but they just get excited. And so we had students starting to stay in the actual operating room. And then it was getting a little bit tricky because when another team would come and try to grab their file, there wasn't enough room or enough space for them to kind of grab what they needed. So just have a place where each team has a work area that they will go to each time if you feel like that's fitting for your class. And then with that, we also feel like assigning captains is a very, key component in what helps the day go smooth for us. So what we do when we're making those teams is we assign a captain, and that person is in charge of pretty much everything for that team. So they're the person who is in charge, and they're the only person in charge of checking the enter keys. If everyone on the team is confused and they've already asked another captain and they're still not sure, they're the only person allowed to come ask us a question. And just those kind of logistical things, because again, you're going to feel super overwhelmed if you have like 30 different kids coming in asking you questions throughout that day. You also want to prevent any possible discipline issues. And so the less kids you have kind of roaming around or just freely walking around, the better.
And to go along with that, I got a couple of things talked about before this, but you're going to be the hype person that day. So you want to be able to be DJing, putting on some fun music. You want to be able to be like the one like walking around, like playing it up for them. And if you're having to worry about fixing this person's work or whatever it may be, like you're not going to be able to do all of that. And then your transformation is just not going to be as fun. So, you want to free yourself up. And
we're not saying like that you are not going to be assisting students and supporting students, but rather we've just found that the more systems you have in place, I guess the least prohibiting it is going to be to you and giving yourself access to help in those cases that you are needed.
That's very true. So the next thing to think about is like, where your kids are going, how you're going to get them there. So once they're in your room, how are you going to deliver expectations and directions? We usually have a slide up on the screen that has our expectations of the day, to show students.
I got lost.
I know. Okay, imagine this really cool slide. No, but it's usually just a quick slide that shows sort of the steps for each station or whatever it may be for that day. The expectations. So we quickly go over those. And then we always model one complete station or one complete question, however your transformation is working, however you
structure.
it. We always go through one together. So we'll say, okay, when you come, you're going to grab this, you're going to work through it on here, and then I'm going to put this back, and I'm going whatever. So we always go through one station together. But keeping in mind that you do want to keep the energy high, because they're going to be excited when they come in. So you want to make sure that you have a system for this because you want it to be quick, not like 20 minutes of directions and rules and expectations. And again, that kind of goes along with how's your classroom set up from day to day? Like they should kind of already know that when we're in teams, we work together, all that good stuff. And then, like I said, before you want to play the part, because if you're playing the part, your students are the buy-in will be much better. It'll be there and they're going to be engaged. So that's why we're wearing these cool vests, not just because we love wearing these around the house. But these were for one of we actually did a glow construction day.
Yeah.
That was on Zoom too.
Yeah.
So we always sort of play the part in some way and dress up to go along with the theme. And then when students come into the classroom, we are like super high energy. If you're just like, oh, hey, yeah, I did this, like, come on, you guys, let's have fun. Like, the buy-in's not going to be there. So when they're coming in on CSI Day, we're like, oh, I'm so glad you're here, detectives. Like, we've been waiting for you. There have been some crimes we need you to solve. Like, we're playing it up so much. And yeah, you may think like, oh, but middle schoolers, like, they're cool. Like, when it comes to a transformation, they will have fun. I mean, our kids were wearing mustaches, fake mustaches, and like shades in class and stuff. Like, they will love it if you love it. So, yeah, no matter how tired you are, no matter whatever happened before you came to school, like, you have to play the part.
And just to add, we know a lot of you are 3rd through 5th grade teachers or 3rd through 6th grade. We know there's some others sprinkled around, but again, we know that we've gotten middle schoolers to do it, and so we know with the little ones, it's not that it's easier, but they just get so much more excited for things like this, and so just keep in mind you have a lot of flexibility with how you do that. Me and Katie have very different teaching styles, and so you're sitting there saying like, I would never say that to my kids, like, not that, you're one of those like traditional serious teachers, but we all have different comfort levels in how we kind of show our excitement for things. And so just make it your own. And again, like Katie said, you're going to be the one who sets the tone for that day. So if your students see that something different's going on, they're going to be excited about that.
And it's totally up to you, but we've also sort of like put out some teasers before, and we'll be like, hey, on Friday, if you happen to have a neon shirt, you should wear it. And they'll be like, why? We don't tell them. But so there's little things like that, where we've said, yeah, like put out signs the day before so they kind of get an idea that something's going on. So that's another way to sort of get that buy-in and engagement if you don't feel super comfortable with acting a fool.
Are you calling us fools?
Oh, sorry. No, that's not it.
So the next thing that we're going to kind of talk about and get into detail about is checking answers, because we said this is a really important part of classroom transformation. So again, you have to have a system that doesn't involve you, or at least doesn't 100% depend on you. And so just like with modeling how the whole day is going to look from start to finish in each station or a task that you give them at the beginning of class, within that you're going to also want to model how students check their answers. And I know it sounds like it's super basic, but again, you want to give more instructions and details to your students so that the day is as smooth as possible. So this is one example of how we've had our students check answers. This was for CSI Day, and what we did is we made some very silly, cringy videos in our students' words, and we made a QR code. If you are not familiar with how to make QR codes, if you just Google QR code generator, you'll get a bunch of free options, and so literally that's all we did. And we just printed them on documents, and we taped them next to each crime scene that you saw earlier. So this is Katie's amazing acting.
Principal Matsuzaki's walkie-talkie was stolen in the bathroom by a custodian. Why? Because he was irked that they don't get reserved parking spots.
Again, just super silly. If you are in the TikTok world, you probably remember hearing this song at some point. So we kind of just try to take what our students' interests are and kind of play off of those. So in this, I guess how we structured CSI Day, they would, in their teams, go to a crime scene, grab the case file, take it to their workstation, solve the questions, and then when their entire team had their work and thinking and everyone was ready, their captain would take their device. Again, at the beginning of class, we kind of set some guidelines for that. If they had a cell phone, someone in the team had a cell phone, that person pulled it out, put it face down on the table, and then they were only allowed to grab it when they were going to go scan that QR code. You could also do that with Chromebooks or whatever works for you. After they scanned the QR code, they'd report back to their workstation, and then their team would get to watch the video together. And from the video, they would know if they got the right answers, because for this particular one, each question gave, it was like who, what, when, where, I think.
And how, yeah.
So for example, like if the answer was 2, it would tell them, oh, it happened in LA. And so that's how they knew if they were right or wrong. We've also done other very simple ways where it's just an envelope sitting at the station with all the answers. So if you are like, I'm not interested in doing all this extra stuff, again, that's totally fine. Just take your answers, cut them up, and throw them in an envelope. Or you can literally just have a designated answer key place where you just have the answer sitting there. And again, throughout that, you can easily watch if students are using it responsibly. Because we're not sitting here saying like our students never do things they're not supposed to. We're just saying by putting all these things into place, it kind of limits or takes away more chance of them doing those things.
Yes. And then another thing to think about when you're structuring the day is how you're going to reset for the next class. So in our situation, we have 3 math classes that come to us throughout the day. So we need to make sure that we have everything ready to go for the next class, because there's not enough time in our transition period or transition time to reset everything. So we usually take the last couple minutes of class and have our students reset each station. And this would include, like, so if it's a game, like putting everything back where it's supposed to be, we pass or make sure that everyone has a blank worksheet for the next class, or wherever we're recording our work or answers. So we just, ask our students to help us set everything back up. It doesn't take very long. They know how it's supposed to look because it was how it looked when they came in. And so it makes just life easier. And you can take a little bit of a breath before the next set of kids come in. Of course, you don't have to worry about that if you only have one class for the day. But, and I mean, if you only have one class, you could also think, how am I going to ask my students to help me pick this up and make life easier again for you? We usually have our last class help us like fold tablecloths and put all the cones here and such like that. So it just makes it a little bit easier. You have students who are willing to help you, so
yeah, use them. Again, just take off a lot of that pressure and workload from you and utilize your students to do things like that. So that brings us to Casey's video again. So now that we have kind of gone through how we put together and think through a classroom transformation, it is your turn to kind of decide what's that going to look like in your classroom for your teaching style and your students. So we have a completed map here for you of that whole process and kind of just how we think through it. Again, you're going to notice like this is not a 5-page lesson plan. We just have some key points that were covered during this session that we like to make sure that we know what that's going to look like so that that day runs smooth. This particular one, we wanted to give you a different example than the one we used, which was CSI Day. So this one's how we broke down our order of operations day. And again, if you're a 6th grade teacher, this one was on the order of operations. So maybe this is something that you can utilize in your class too. You're going to get a blank template so that you could do this work for your own class as well.
But if you're like, hey, I'd like one that's already made up for me, we got you. We have on our Teachers Pay Teachers, which is under Transforming the Middle, we have 2 classroom transformations that are ready to go. One of them is our CSI Day and one of them is our GLOW Day. If you do teach 6th grade math, our CSI Day is on dividing fractions, or maybe not even 6th grade math, but your kids are ready for it. We also have one on evaluating expressions, and that's our GLOW Day. But both of these do or are available in a editable template. So you can put your own questions in, but everything else is ready to go. And both of them come with some decor and signs and things like that. So they're pretty much set up for you. All you have to really think about is that third step of how I'm going to have students come in and all of that. You can also find us on Instagram under, again, Transforming the Middle. And we have, what are they called? Not stories. Yeah, stories. Highlights, thank you. Saved from both of those days if you want to see a little bit more of how we actually implement this in our classroom. If you're a 6th grade teacher and you're like, curious about other resources, we also have some curriculum that we've written. We have that bundled, or we have each lesson there for you. So
We're
go
just
check us out, and we would love to help you in any way we can, because we love transformations, and we think
we
they're
really
very powerful. We love answering questions. We love hearing your guys' ideas. So we also have our email there, but communicate with us, reach out to us.
Send us pictures if you decide to do a classroom transformation, if you are in the planning process, or when you get to the planning process and you're like, I'm not sure if this is going to work, or I need some input. Again, feel free to email us, or you can DM us on Instagram. But we are super excited to see what you do with this information and how you take it to your classroom. So again, thanks for hanging out with us. We hope that you are able to take some of these ideas. And again, just feel free to reach out to us. Bye.
Bye.